right, check this out. I've been practicing this one for a while, but you take a Bitcoin, put it in your other hand, and it's gone. It's sort of like the visual analogy for the crypto portfolio this year, but the ironic part is that the magician made his own money disappear. In today's video, I want to give you an update on the industry and give you a personal update on my portfolio, but spoiler alert, it's not good. Now, this is my third cycle inside of Bitcoin where I went from nothing to something, back down to nothing. Starting in 2014 when I bought 6 Bitcoins at $600 a piece. Had no idea what I was buying, just bought them, and I rode that $3,000 all the way to $1,500. I sold them all at a 50% loss to buy myself a drone, which I promptly crashed onto a theater stage filming a magician friend of mine. I had no idea what Bitcoin was about, but I watched it explode in value. That's when I learned about the Federal Reserve and who controls the flow and supply of money. I got back into it in 2017 at $2,000 per Bitcoin. I watched my $10,000 portfolio magically turn into over $100,000. I didn't sell a single one, and I watched my portfolio with over $100,000 go back down to about $15,000. And now we've come to the third cycle, and this is the most painful one, where I was magically able to turn $100,000 into over $1 million back down to literally zero. I'm laughing right now because I feel like Bitcoin and I have a toxic relationship. Sort of like an ex that keeps coming back in your life and you're like, this isn't gonna work out again, but you make it work for a while, and when everything falls apart, you remember exactly why things didn't work out in the first place. But hey, at least it's not as bad as the guy who paid 10,000 Bitcoins to buy 2 pizzas because at his peak, he would have been worth over $500 million. But you're not a true, real Bitcoiner until you've lost it all and back again, a hobbit's tale. So in today's video, I want to give you an overview on the whole industry and share with you my perspective on where I think we're at in this crazy cycle. And then at the end of the video, I want to share with you a personal story of where I'm at today. I think it's going to be super interesting. So with that said, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Andrei Jikh. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the Bitcoin. So I think the question on everybody's mind right now is, how low can Bitcoin go? And the answer is, I have no idea. But to understand where we're going, we have to know how we got here. And the way we got here is because the banks pulled a magic trick over crypto. And the way they did that is using something called leverage, where with $1, they can borrow many, many hundreds of dollars against it. Now, that system of leverage works for the banking industry, but when you combine leverage and crypto, you get a perfect mix of a combustible fuel that's ready to ignite. That's because when you have a finite asset like Bitcoin and you allow it to be stretched to infinity, that's when something breaks, when there's no checks and balances. That's what happens when you have 21 million of something and you allow it to exist in a place that can infinitely print its own tokens, to cross-collateralize everything, to lend it out to other institutions, because without any regulatory oversight, eventually that system will break. But because there's only so much of that money to go around, not everyone will be able to withdraw, and that's when you get in trouble. In the banking world, this system works perfectly because dollars are actually infinite, and banks can be bailed out, and customers are protected by SIPC and FDIC insurances. None of those checks and balances exist in the world of crypto. All we have, or at least had, was trust from the CEOs of these companies to do what was right by their customers. But ever since that power has been abused, we're seeing a domino effect and all of this leverage unraveled one after another, triggered mostly by the Mac Daddy of the biggest and most trusted exchange, and now it looks like it's gonna set us back for years. So the ultimate question is, where are we gonna go from here, and is this the end of Bitcoin? Let's take a look at this outside of Bitcoin for a second, because it's gonna blow your mind. Huge shout out to Tom Bilyeu and Raoul Pal for their podcast on this, but the reason that stocks, real estate, Bitcoin, and other assets move up and down in value is a huge part thanks to what's called the business cycle. The business cycle lasts anywhere from 2 to 10 plus years, and it's influenced mostly by a change in the interest rates from the central banks. So if the economy is a tightrope walker, the Fed's job is to push this person forward, but not too fast so they don't trip. They have to keep them perfectly in the middle, not too far to the right or to the left so they don't fall. In other words, they have to change the interest rates when the economy's too hot and we have high inflation like right now by raising their rates. And when the economy slows down too much, they have to lower rates to spur the economy again, but not too fast or risk hyperinflation. So here's exactly how this business cycle actually looks like. Starting with the early phase is when the GDP, incomes, and employment are all growing, credit grows, profits grow, and central bank policy is to keep rates low. But as the economy grows in this phase, inflation starts to warm up and get a little hotter. This is when we move to the middle phase. This is where the growth, credits, and profits peak, and the policy is neutral. Interest rates go up a little, but they're still relatively low. And this is the phase that everyone wants to be in. This is where our economy has been for over 10 plus years. After the 2008 collapse and before the Rona recession, you could have invested into almost anything and you would have ended up making money. But that creates inflation and eventually something breaks. And that brings us to today. Where we are is a transition period between the end phase and a transition to recession. This is where the growth slows, credit tightens, policy contracts, aka rates go up, and the growth is falling. Now in this cycle right now, we're about here, where activity is falling, credit or liquidity is drying up at $95 billion a month, profits are declining, but policy has not eased up yet. What this means is that interest rates are not going to come down from the Fed until they see us at the very bottom of that cycle. Now, the most important thing that's going to really blow your mind about all this is how this relates to the psychology of investing. Credit to Raul Paul for this one, but if you think about what investing actually is, it's a manifestation of our future selves. We invest our money to envision the best versions of ourselves in the future. And when we're making money, we're really happy and we feel like we're really good at this investing thing. We transition from optimism to belief, to thrill, and to euphoria. But as the value of our investments go down, we go through the downward cycle of psychology. Anxiety through denial, panic, and now we're at anger. And this right here is one of the hardest phases to go through because we have to come face to face with the fact that the person we built ourselves up to be in the future is no more. And now we're left wondering, well, why did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, it's this guy, it's the SEC, it's Tom Brady, it's the YouTubers. But this phase marks somewhere near the bottom of the cycle. But what's crazy is that we overestimate on both the ups and the downs. Check this out. If you zoom out and you look at the stock market from a linear chart, it looks like a scary roller coaster. But if you look at it on a logarithmic scale, it's a pretty smooth curve up. And it's the same thing that happens with Bitcoin. If you look at Bitcoin on a linear scale, it looks like a terrifying roller coaster as well. And if you look at it on a logarithmic scale, it's also a smooth curve upward. And that's what adoption and price growth looks like. It happens over a long period of time through multiples of these crazy cycles like the one we're going through right now and like the ones I've been through so many times before. Now, I'm not sure if you're still left watching this video, but I want to share with you what I've learned through each and every one of these cycles, and then I'll give you an update what my portfolio looks like today. So in 2014, I learned about this mysterious magic internet money, and I heard that people were making money from it, so I wanted to learn more about it. Now, if you ever want your mind blown, go read a book called The Creature of Jekyll Island. But TLDR, I learned that money was not controlled by the government. It was mostly controlled by a private institution, and Bitcoin was supposed to be the answer to that system. All sounded fancy, but I didn't really care about any of that stuff at that time. Fast forward to 2017 though, and I learned two new things. The first thing I learned was not to invest in the cult of personalities, and the second thing I learned was that there was a very big difference between crypto and Bitcoin. Now what I mean by that is, I learned not to deify or worship people that I thought were smart or who could be the creators of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto. I learned it was better to invest in something that had a use case, which was super helpful to me, especially last year and the year before then, when people were buying tech stocks because the cult of personalities. I learned firsthand that people were flawed, and it wasn't a good idea to base my investing decisions on something that wasn't perfect. People aren't perfect. And the other thing I learned is that because Bitcoin was the first, there was an argument in 2017 that because it couldn't have been the best, the fastest, the cheapest, or the safest crypto. And I bought that argument, which is why I did more useless research in 2017 that hopefully I'll never do again. I diversified into a bunch of cryptocurrency projects, hoping that one of them would someday challenge Bitcoin, but to this day, none of them ever did. 99.9% of them have failed, and that's because what I learned now that I didn't know back then was that every crypto project had the trilemma problem. In other words, they had to decide between decentralization, scalability, and safety. Pick two. After 10 years, that is as good as we've ever gotten it to be. Now, if any crypto project promises that they've solved all three problems, that's because they're probably omitting, usually, the scalability part. And that makes sense because new coins don't really have a lot of users, so they're not stress testing this factor yet. So every project must pick two. Now, this is just a rabbit hole I'm not going to go into this time, but the point is 2017 taught me what makes Bitcoin truly special. And now that brings us to 2022 and the lessons that I've learned now and where I'm at today. All right, so let's talk about BlockFi, because this is a story I've told since around July this year, after the collapse of Voyager and after I personally lost anywhere between $300,000 to $1.2 million, depending on the value of Bitcoin and Ethereum. After losing that money, I tried to use that as an opportunity to warn as many people as I could to take their crypto off of BlockFi and off the online exchanges so they don't fall victim to the same things I did. Please don't forget to not keep your crypto online. Please don't keep your crypto online. Be careful. Please do not keep your cryptocurrency online. Please remember, do not keep your Bitcoin and your crypto online. Please do not keep your crypto online. Please don't forget to move it offline onto a cold storage wallet. Don't forget to move it offline onto a cold storage wallet so you don't lose the money. Put it offline on a cold storage wallet though, because keeping your crypto online is not very safe. Don't forget to move it offline. Grab the money while the money's still there. Don't forget to move your crypto offline in a cold storage wallet. Please remember to take it offline, keep it on cold storage because it's not safe. Grab the money while it's still there, take it offline. Don't forget to grab the money while it's still there, but move your crypto offline to a cold storage wallet. Keep it offline, keep it somewhere else, but don't forget to move it offline onto a cold storage wallet. Please don't forget to move it offline onto a hardware wallet. Please don't forget to move it offline onto a cold storage wallet like a ledger. That brings me to how I personally feel. I feel angry, upset, and disappointed. I feel angry at the CEOs who destroyed what millions of people around the world enjoyed using. I'm angry at the fact that they stole money from their customers and they stole our trust, which is going to take years to rebuild. I'm angry at the fact that they're able to roam around free with no accountability and no apology to the public. I'm upset at the SEC for not doing their homework and not doing a better job and not giving the consumers the protections we so long asked for. And I'm disappointed in the media at large for downplaying the real true story, which to me is about the roots of corruption, cover-up, and as far as maybe politics. I've not seen anyone attempt to tell that real story yet. And mostly I'm disappointed in myself. Because ever since I started YouTube, my goal was to educate and teach people the things that I didn't understand when it came to investing. And rather than creating a character that was always right or who was the smartest, I've always focused on integrity, transparency, and honesty. That has always been the cornerstone of my character. And while I sometimes don't take myself seriously in my videos, I take my work and my research extremely seriously, because I understand that trust takes an extremely long time to build and it is quickly lost. For that reason, I'm disappointed in myself and I feel like I've let you down. I wish I knew, but I didn't. I wish that the YouTube community and the creators could also come together and use their influence, their passion, and their anger to pressure Congress to make real change. But I also understand that anger doesn't create change. There's no progress there. That's about accountability. So going forward, I'm no longer taking finance sponsors unless they're FDIC insured for banks and SIPC insured for exchanges. That's the right thing to do. I want to apologize for the change in tone in this video, but I wanted you to hear it from me. And as always, I want to thank you for sticking with me, for giving me the benefit of the doubt, because without you, I truly would not be here. And again, I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, as far as the industry itself, this to me is not the end. If anything, the industry will come back better and stronger with new features like proof of funds where we won't have to trust the CEOs and their integrity or lack thereof. Unfortunately, we have to go through these painful moments to get there. Now, as far as Bitcoin itself is concerned, I can't comment on whether anyone should invest or buy it, But to me, Bitcoin still does what it says it does. It is still a value transfer on the internet. It is still indestructible. It's still decentralized. And as I slowly start to build back from nothing, I hope that the lessons I've learned along the way, which I've tried to share in this video, allow me to keep the money the fourth time around. I'm cautiously optimistic. But once again, I want to thank you so much for giving me the benefit of the doubt, for hearing me out, and for sticking with me. As always, I'd love to see you back here on Monday, Friday, sometimes a Wednesday. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.